Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Chicago in the late 19th century, a tale of struggle, hope, and tragedy unfolded. The story of the Haymarket Affair. This bedtime tale takes us back to May 4, 1886, a night that would forever leave its mark on the history of the labor movement and the fight for workers' rights. In those days, the American labor movement was in full swing. Workers toiled in factories and industries, enduring long hours, low wages, and unsafe working conditions. They dreamed of a better life for themselves and their families, a life free from the chains of exploitation. Amidst this backdrop, the Haymarket Affair began as a peaceful rally in support of workers striking for an 8-hour workday. The gathering took place at the Haymarket Square, where labor leaders and activists, including Albert Parsons, August Spies, and Samuel Fielden, addressed the crowd of thousands. Among those in attendance was a young worker named John. He had worked in a factory for years, his hands calloused from the relentless labor. John longed for a life where he could spend time with his family and pursue his dreams, but the relentless hours he worked left little time for anything else. As John listened to the impassioned speeches at the rally, he felt a sense of unity with his fellow workers. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their voices rising like a chorus, demanding fairness and dignity in the workplace. The atmosphere was electric, filled with hope for a brighter future. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, darkness enveloped the Haymarket Square. The peaceful rally was coming to a close when an unexpected turn of events changed the course of the night. A group of policemen arrived, seeking to disperse the crowd. They demanded that the gathering end, but the protesters, undeterred, stood their ground. As tensions escalated, a bomb was thrown into the midst of the police ranks. Pandemonium ensued as the bomb exploded, filling the air with smoke and chaos. The policemen and protesters were caught in the turmoil, and the square became a battleground. John found himself swept up in the confusion, desperately seeking safety amidst the madness. When the dust settled, the consequences were devastating. Several policemen and civilians lay dead, and many more were injured. The aftermath of the Haymarket Affair was one of grief and despair as the city of Chicago grappled with the tragedy that had unfolded in its streets. In the days that followed, the Haymarket Affair became the focus of widespread controversy and outrage. The authorities swiftly arrested 8 prominent labor leaders and activists, known as the Haymarket 8, and placed them on trial. John watched as the trial unfolded, his heart heavy with sorrow for the lives lost and the injustice that seemed to prevail. He knew that the peaceful intentions of the rally had been overshadowed by the violence that erupted, but he also believed in the righteousness of the workers' cause. The trial captivated the nation, drawing attention to the plight of workers and the fight for their rights. The Haymarket 8 were charged with conspiracy, despite a lack of concrete evidence linking them to the bombing. The trial was fraught with bias, and the outcome seemed predetermined. As the days turned into weeks, the Haymarket 8 were found guilty, and 7 of them were sentenced to death. The verdict was met with outrage and protests from labor activists and supporters across the country. Despite pleas for clemency and calls for a fair trial, the authorities remained unyielding. On November 11, 1887, 4 of the Haymarket 8, Albert Parsons, August Spies, Adolph Fisher, and George Engel, were executed by hanging. The other 3, including Samuel Fielden, were given life sentences, while the 8th defendant later died in prison. The legacy of the Haymarket Affair endured long after the events of that fateful night. It became a rallying cry for workers' rights and a symbol of the struggle for justice and equality. The Haymarket Martyrs, as they came to be known, were remembered as heroes of the labor movement, their sacrifice immortalized in the annals of history. As we drift off to sleep, let us remember the tale of the Haymarket Affair. It teaches us the importance of standing up for what is right and just, even in the face of adversity. May we carry the spirit of the Haymarket Martyrs in our hearts, cherishing the hard-fought victories of the labor movement and the ongoing fight for workers' rights. And as we close our eyes and surrender to slumber, let us honor the memory of those who gave their lives in the pursuit of a fair and equitable society. Sleep well, dear dreamer, knowing that the struggle for justice and equality lives on. And may the legacy of the Haymarket affair inspire us to continue the quest for a better and more compassionate world.